Welcome to Cinematalkraphy. We watch movies with you so you don't have to.
Welcome to Cinematography. I'm your host, Roberto Villegas, joined by the epic, the awesome, the powerful,
the one, the only, Brandt Hughes.
Brandt, we're here once again at the Alamo Drafthouse here at Slaughter Lane.
This parking lot is kind of our home away from
this
home.
has become our secondary location. Like if
let's just build a studio space out here.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if CosmicRadio.TV's primary studio is my apartment building, my apartment room, or my bedroom, depending on what type of podcast I'm doing, this is definitely home number dos because I think this is the only place we tend to see movies in Austin. I'm closer to the Village Drafthouse, but I think we've only seen movies here, you and I. And today we are talking about How to Train Your Dragon 2.
That is correct.
This is Burke. The best kept secret this side of, anywhere. Granted, it may not look like much, but this wet heap of rock packs more than a few surprises.
Now, last night, before you came to see it today, it's a Monday, on Sunday night, I had purchased and watched over Amazon Instant Video How to Train Your Dragon 1.
Finally.
Yeah, I was definitely late to the game on that one, and I will not lie and say that, I saw it in theaters. No, I was way late to the game. And I don't even know why. I think that's part of the year of just I had missed a whole bunch of films. I felt bad because it was I just couldn't see a lot of the films. I was so mad at myself because I kept hearing such good about this film, and how it had been DreamWorks' Pixar kind of quality film, and how things had completely changed with it. And I saw it last night, and I loved it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I do have some issues with it, but it wasn't enough to overpower the rest of the film.
Sure.
I had maybe issues with how quickly Hiccup and Astrid's relationship worked out. And I assume that even though we're spoiling 2 in this discussion like we always do, I assume that people who have watched 2 have probably seen 1. Yeah. And so a lot of that won't be mysterious.
If they haven't, then they're monsters.
Yeah, I agree. I will definitely agree. But with 2, what I really enjoyed is it seemed to fix all the issues I had with 1.
Okay.
A lot of the relationships sort of, rebuilt quickly. And I guess since 1 had already kind of set a lot of those groundwork of Hiccup and Astrid hooking up already and things like that, it was just sort of that's just there. Because I always felt like in the first one it just sort of happened quickly. But they at least answer a lot of those questions by kind of giving that was 5 years ago kind of speech. Mm-hmm. But I dug this a lot more than I dug 1.
Yeah. I saw the first one after it had left theaters because I was a little hesitant, because I was a little hesitant, and then Dave Chen from Slash Film, he praised the hell out of the first one, just incessant, week after week. I think he ended up seeing it in theaters 7 or 9 times or something. Right. And so I saw it and loved the first one. The second one, I think I enjoy more than the first one as well.
Well, I dug this one because I dug this version more. Is that for me, 1 was sort of a Hiccup's coming of age, kind of becoming whoever he's going to become, and this was more of Hiccup's finding out who that person is, and sort of becoming the man he's going to be. Whereas sort of if 1 is the adolescence kind of getting at proving who you are and showing your importance, this was the Hiccup showing what kind of man he's going to be in the future. And they racked up the action heavily, more so this one, especially because you had a lot more of the flying sequences. Basically, you already established a world where dragons are not these monstrous, scary creatures, but more of these awesome beings that we can coexist with, and that if we garner their respect, they'll respect you back and sort of show not only support, but be there by your side like a good, faithful, like a best friend kind of thing, almost like a good pet. So but a little bit more than that, because they're definitely intelligent and awesome creatures. You kind of learned that in the first. But what I really dug was that because we'd already established all that, we racked up right away to the flights and right away to all the beautiful set pieces they had in the film.
Yeah, sometimes sequels get into the habit of they try and follow some of the same structure, and they need to like reestablish stuff. But this one, it felt like, you know, they didn't need to double back on anything, and it just kind of went with the natural progression of the story, which was great. And this film was so gorgeous.
Yo, God, it was beautiful.
It was insanely pretty. It feels a bit more stylized, shooting wise, than the first one.
Yeah.
There were some amazing shots, like I remember when they first come across the trappers, the dragon trappers. Like, there's a shot of the ship sailing, and you see the cliffs, the ice cliffs.
Yeah.
Right? And it was almost like photorealistic. It was insanely good.
I was going to say the same thing. For me, I usually can tell, like, my barometer for a CG film is either hair or water effects. Because water, I always feel, is kind of tricky.
Sure. Yeah.
One, because it's got a little bit of random volume to it. Yeah, it follows certain principles in physics, of course, but there's a little bit of randomness to it, especially when you have droplets and things like that. So that's usually a sign for me when water looks realistic, and you kind of can almost, I can't feel it through the film, but you can feel the volume of it. You can kind of feel it slip through that. And hair in general and anything else. But what I dug a lot about this movie and the CG-ness of it all and how they did it was that when it came to the characters, they're perfectly cartoony. They're perfectly within that realm of the real, their world, so to speak. But the minute we got into the air, like, if the first film, like, the amazing shot for me was the Aurora Borealis when they went in the sky, this was just like blue, perfect skies and clouds and everything kind of working in harmony. And then you see the the whole ice sculptures in there and sort of the glaciers, just how perfectly blue they were in terms of that, like, hue. It was beautiful, breathtaking.
And like all of their, like, everyone is more expressive and feels a lot more natural than the first one. Which I think is a testament to all the actors and the animators and stuff. And the only thing that kind of took me out a little bit at first was Hiccup's mom. Like, her face is a very exaggerated structure, but then once I started noticing that what they did is reverse engineered Hiccup's face.
That's exactly what I was saying.
And then it worked perfectly.
Yeah, that's
for
the
me.
point. Like, I could tell, like, right away that what they were trying to do was establish this is his kid's mom. This is where he gets those physical traits from. Because, like, much like everybody else, the joke is you look like your mother, or you have some other features, much like your father, that kind of thing. And you could definitely tell where physically he takes over in terms of his mother. But what I dug about a lot of that scene was that, even though I could kind of, like, once she removed the mask, I could kind of see where that shot, where the whole thing was going to go. Even then, when it was introduced, like, the mother, like, that was going to be, I thought that was going to be the major big reveal. And then we go inside the kind of glacial thing and see this beautiful tropical landscape being protected by this sort of ice shield. It was like, gorgeous greens, because we had, in terms of the film, it was a lot of blues and a lot of, browns. But, once we get inside, it's these gorgeous, lush greens and reds and yellows and orange. And I'm amazed that the animators can work in those differing palettes because, like, for example, when we got to Drago's kind of area, it's very dingy, very metallic or brown, and almost feels, warlike, much like it should be. But, we come to the whole jungle area, it is this vibrant life, and everything's moving, and I'm amazed when animators can work between those two separate worlds, because they're both different worlds tonally, not just in action and things like that, but just even in shades and how you approach them.
And also, Hiccup had a lightsaber
That
in this
fucking
movie.
too.
Like, what?
The fucking flame sword, that was amazing, because I had not seen that coming, and it was just like, oh shit, flame sword, magic time. Like, I wanted it to be magic, but it was kind of cool. That's the only thing I like about Hiccup, is that he is this weird, blacksmith engineer kind of guy, and it's interesting that he's the character that's able to make a lot of these cool little gadgets and things, and has a certain flair to him. Like, I think that was the coolest part, was that he had, like, in the movie, he has this sort of not dragon armor, but he has, like, this shield armor, and he's sort of protected by it. It's just really cool. And all the
it's almost like steampunk.
It's very steampunk, but it actually, to be honest, it reminds me. I know you probably never played Final Fantasy IV.
No.
But it reminds me of Cecil, like Cecil's main character in the Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo, depending how you know it. When he's in a Dark Knight mode, or before he becomes a paladin and things like that, he has this kind of black over kind of mask over him, and it completely masks his eyes, all you see is his face. And it reminded me a lot of like that in terms of the thematics, because it's funny. There's a point where I think Astrid meets his mother, and she's in her kind of tribal kind of weird gear,
right?
And she goes, "That's your mom?" I go, "Well, you know where I get my theatrics from."
Right, yeah.
And it's such a funny line because it's so true. He's got all this kind of like look and feel, and the whole flame sword, and the whole fire kind of ring and things like that. Like, it's really cool how he's learned how to tame things and that. But even the idea that he has these sort of gizmos and things like that make him sort of this almost surreal kind of being.
Sure, yeah. And they even in the first film he's got a lot of that, so it was nice to build up that part of his eccentricities.
So let's go over some big things. What was probably the most for you moving scene in the film? Because I know first what is for me.
It's tough to say because they went through some really, like, I was impressed by some of the stuff that they went to with this. So I mean, first and foremost, his dad.
Yeah, I cried. I'm not gonna lie, I fucking cried.
I was a bit choked up.
I cried. I have no problem. I have no problem admitting when I cry at this point. At this point in my life, I don't fucking care anymore.
I will cry when I watch it again.
It was like when it happened, you didn't know what was gonna happen. I mean, yes, you think Hiccup might die and things like that, but I was like, no. Like, the minute he jumped and the minute the bolt went out, like, that's got to be the toughest thing to deal with as a son. Not only your father dying, and sadly, it happens. But what the worst part of that was for him, for Hiccup, yeah, we have a bunch of crickets and bugs around us.
I was just thinking about how they look like dragons. They're all like flying through the sky.
That's okay. They're all joining us. They want to be part of the podcast too.
So as you're saying.
But anyways, what was the most depressing part was that it was his best friend that killed him, and not by any choice of his own, but just because of genetics and hormones and things like that. It was so heartbreaking for that to be the case. Because it's like, how do you handle that as, your best friend essentially just killed your father? Not because he has any control over the matter. Like, he doesn't. And it took a lot for, at the end for Hiccup to get through to Toothless, the Night Fury dragon.
Yeah.
And it was heart-wrenching because of that, because it was just, that was probably the hardest part, was just like, how do you deal with that? Like, your best friend just killed your father.
Yeah, there's a lot at play in that scene. There's a lot of mechanics at work, and there's a lot of emotions at work, and it was very similar. It kind of, there's a lot of mirroring of the first film, and that kind of mirrored when sort of at the climax of the first film.
Yeah.
They're fighting the big giant dragon, and they're flying up, and there's this incredible wide shot where you see this monstrous dragon, and there's Hiccup and Toothless, and they're just this little thing flying up straight into the sky, and then they turn around, shoot, and there's this giant ball of fire, and Toothless wraps around him and totally saves him, just like his dad does.
I'm not gonna lie. Every time that's happened in the movies, even in this one, I had a similar shot when the horn was shot off from the second Alpha. I always say in my head, "Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million." Obviously referencing to Star Wars, because it's those kind of shots. Like, it feels like, for me, this feels like a second movie in terms of like the action and things like that. It feels like everything's ramped up at least 5 or 6 notches higher. Because the first one, we had some action for sure near the end and tail end and things like that. But this one was like almost nonstop kind of action. I mean, we have a dragon race at the beginning. We have
now when that happened, I just I kept saying in my head,
Quidditch.
Now that's pod racing. But like in a great way.
No, that's the point. Is that it felt awesome. Like, it was Quidditch meets pod racing meets everything, and it's like everything you want it to be, because it is exciting. Like, you're excited to watch this, and you don't know what's going on. You just know you're hearing this, narration by Hiccup, kind of explaining what the world's like again, kind of catching us all up. Which I love.
Yeah.
I love that that's how the movies begin and end on each one of them. That they begin with.
It's a really great mirroring.
Yeah, it's all a narrative, and then return to the narrative by Hiccup. And I dig that the first one was sort of this. This is a boring place. This is a terrible place. This is still a boring place, and people who live here are fucking crazy. But, the coolest thing we got, fucking dragons, bitch,
Right.
And I like how the first one was like, talking about the world and sort of catching you up if you forgot about things, and saying, that was 5 years ago. We're here now. And then that last one there. But I think the second moving scene for me was the Viking funeral.
Okay.
Which I thought was a nice touch. I mean, I know they're Vikings, but it was a nice historical touch of how they did it, because you could hear, there's certain things in a Viking funeral beyond just the burning of the body. It's the idea of they're getting sent to Valhalla, they're up and part of Yggdrasil and all that fun jazz and everything else. It was interesting that they worked in that mythology, because it almost at times the Vikings felt like they're just Vikings. That's sort of their. This is just the thing we use. As opposed to having pirates or whatever, or jungle people, whatever the heck you want to call whatever kind of thing. They're just Vikings because whatever, Vikings. Because there's a lot of mythology that has dragons part of it. Viking is not just the only one. But having that funeral there pretty much reminded me, oh wait, that's right. There is certain traditions to Vikings. There are certain things to it, and it was very cool to hear those sort of things mentioned and brought up.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Vikings have a storied, rich history.
Very much so.
And so it was a very nice touch having a bit of that. Since it was back-to-back with the death scene, effectively, those two kind of run together in my mind.
Oh, for sure.
As moments, but yeah, that was really nice.
But it was very, again, it was a very interesting sort of thing. And then after that gets done, that's when sort of Hiccup essentially grows up, for lack of better words. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most about this, because the one thing I relate to when it comes to Hiccup is sort of that figuring out who you are phase of your life, and sort of determining that sort of thing, and almost what kind of man you're going to be. And I love the line that he says where he's talking about his father and how he was so brave, so selfless, and all this stuff, and the idea of like, how can I even fathom to be like him? And then he utters, the lines, you just try. And I really dug that. I really liked the way that he realized that is the kind of man he needs to be. But that's the kind of man he wants to be. He always wanted to be his father. He just never knew what that meant. And I really liked the way it kind of tied everything together and kind of got everything started. But again, I love that it never. I guess the thing is, nothing ever felt out of place. Nothing ever felt like it was just tacked on for the sake of either riling up emotion or something like that. Like, it all felt like part of the narrative. And that's kind of difficult to do, because you and I have seen movies where they've attached things just for sake. Like we're talking about with Godzilla a while back, how it felt like certain things were just there for the sake of being there. And this sort of felt like everything worked, and I really, really liked that. I thought this was fantastic.
I agree. Do you think some of the guys behind like the animation department, they were like, Godzilla's out. Let's go watch Godzilla. And then they see the Godzilla glow up blue, and they're like, God damn it, we did that too.
Yeah, but theirs was cool.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem. The problem is that, yes, Night Fury dragons have a special ability to like do fucking supernovas and shit, which I love that. I love any time. Who knew that dragons could go Super Saiyan, to take another animation thing. But what I loved about it was that when it happened, you're like, fuck yes.
Right, yeah.
And it was like, this is awesome. Like, it never felt that everything that happened, it never, ever felt like they did it just simply to do it. Like, it all made sense, because, like, the mother comes out and says, shows the son sort of the whole other scales that can kind of come out and say, I'm going to show you all the mysteries of your dragon. And then even at that scene where he goes, he's challenging the alpha, and his mother's like, he's challenging it to protect you. And that's sort of this what I love between the two of them is that once Toothless breaks the whole spell of the Alpha, for lack of better words, and sort of goes beyond who he, what defines him physically and becomes whatever being he needs to be. What I love about that whole thing is that it becomes between him and Hiccup. It's this whole symbiotic kind of thing where Hiccup's now the chief of his people, and now Toothless is the chief of his people, and together they're going to merge the two and bring peace to this world. And I love that. I love that that's how it turned out, because it was such a powerful ending. And I think that's what I dug about this one more. Like, 1 I was excited for. 1 was cool. But 2 was like, I want to fucking see 3. Like, I'm ready to see 3. Like, I want 3 right fucking now. Like, can we make that, like, just happen, Brandt?
Sure. I mean,
Can we,
I'll make some calls.
Because I need it now. Like, I need it. Like, I mean that now. Because, like, that ramped me up. I was like, fuck yes. Next movie now, please.
Yeah. I agree with all that. Yeah. What did you think about? So this was the other part that was like next moving, when they basically had the big reunion, right, with the dad and the mom.
That was so fucking beautiful.
Yeah, and then like I especially loved how they made it kind of complicated, where like they've been gone for so long that things have changed. Both of them have changed, and there's this weird hesitancy in the mom's behalf.
Well, because she's
it's like, yeah, she loves him, but like there's so much going on. There's so many emotions at play that it's like they give you just enough to work with that you could see where maybe things are different now, and maybe it's not all gonna work out just perfectly. And like he does a really great job of showing you why they fell for each other and why they're still in love with each other.
That's what I loved about it, was that whole, like, the whole thing. There's a scene, the very beginning of it, where they're meeting up for the first time since 20 years. And the idea what his mother's like, I know what you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna say. I'm selfish, all this sort of stuff. You can yell at me all you want. And he is just like, essentially
in awe.
Well, because I guess the way I can put it is this, and it's hard to explain because I've neither of us are married, but I know that feeling of just when you see someone that you thought you lost, 20 years ago, and you can imagine that he has been probably beating himself up for those 20 years of things. And it at that point, he's already a changed person. Like, he became one with the dragons. He is, a fan of them. His son has taught him, he probably during that time saw a lot of his wife in him and was like, you know what, I really wish she was here. And so when he sees her for the first time in 20 years, it's like, I don't fucking care. Because you're alive. You're here. And you can see that when it comes in the next scene where he's singing the song. He's whistling their song. And they both are singing and dancing, and he's like, I could not imagine my life without you. I had a life without you, and it was horrible,
Right.
And so I love that scene because it just was like, yeah, that's what should happen. And only because, like, if you especially with that, if you love someone that deeply and you care for someone that deeply, you're like, you know what, fuck it all. This is more important than whatever bullshit we had in the past. It's all in the past. Let's live in the now kind of thing. I really dug that. And I think that was what solidified that for me, that whole relationship, was there's a scene when the whole, when Drago's forces come to sort of the island, and Stoic says to I forgot her name, the mother's name. I forgot the character's name. Because then she comes to Hiccup's mother, we'll just say. Sure. He says, we're a team now. What do you want me to do? And it's like, all right, I got to do this, you do this. Done. And you can tell that there's that whole, that it's an entirely different relationship than what she thought it was going to be. Like, she had this illusion of people can't change, and then she sees it, and she's like, no, you just kind of need the right motivation to change. There are some people who can't change because there are people who think the world is one way and refuse to accept the different and the new. But that's what kind of separates, I think, greatness in this world, because we can see, with Hiccup and the idea that this is the new, this is the exciting, this is not that it's exciting, but this is the new and awesome world that he's ushering in, and Stoic as a father could not be more proud. The mother could not be more proud, whereas Drago is scared because it's so different from what he believes that he just can't let that go. And it's funny that I think that now it seems what the movie's saying, at least in this film, if you can't let go of the past, it is doomed to be your future. You see what I'm saying? Because if you think about Drago, he had got his arm hit by a dragon and felt like these things are terrible and vicious creatures that must be not tamed, but must be beaten down and ruled over. Whereas the mother is the exact opposite. You can kind of see with Stoic as a character of what happens when you drop that past and what kind of person you can become. You can become a far better person than you were.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, and I think a lesser film wouldn't have nearly as much nuance in all of these relationships as they're developing, and all of these themes that they explore. And I thought it was really impressive how they were able to do all of that in here.
No, I agree. If you had to say you had any issue with this film, that's not to say the movie's bad or anything like that, but if you had to say there was any issues with the film, like what would you be your maybe minor issue, maybe your minor gripe, if you have any?
Right. The only super minor thing that I would hold against it is just I wanted before the film ended, I wanted just like one more moment of Hiccup dealing with the death of his father.
Yeah.
And they address it a little bit when his mom is talking about how he would be so proud.
Yeah.
And they build the statue of him, and that's a nice touch. And I get that they can't end on this really solemn, depressing
they
note.
They can't. But
I feel like a film that was so brave and courageous in exploring some of these deeper, darker territories, I think it would have been really cool to maybe just put one more note in there of kind of a solemn contemplation to show that he's really suffered an incredible loss in his life, and I felt like it was brushed off just a tiny bit quickly.
If I had any minor gripe, I could have done less with the whole oogling over
right.
What's his face?
Sure.
I forgot the character's name, but the whole female of the twin set. I could deal with that a little bit less. I kind of liked his comedy relief, but I was just like, I get what you're doing, and it's funny that you're doing it, but you could back off it a little tad. If I had any minor gripes, because I liked the character he was, and I enjoyed his character for sure. But that was like my minor issue was just that small smidge thing.
Yeah,
not enough to completely destroy this film.
Sure, yeah.
Not enough to say anything horrible about this movie. Definitely a film that I'm probably going to see again. Maybe not in theaters because I just, there's so many other movies I need to see. Mm-hmm. But I'm definitely going to see this again. I'll definitely purchase this in some form or fashion because this was well worth it. And I really am excited for what they could do with the third one. I don't know what they'll do, but at the same time, I didn't know what they were going to do with the second one because after seeing the first one, it had a pretty complete story too, which is why I probably enjoyed it much as I did. I will say, what is it with DreamWorks and late title cards?
I don't even remember.
So the late title card, for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, is at the end of the movie, whenever they show you the title card for How to Train Your Dragon or How to Train Your Dragon 2, as the movie closes, that's what's called a late title card, is where they just have that boom.
Late title card could also be, 5 to 10 minutes into the film.
That's true. Okay, well, then what is it with the ending?
Where it doesn't, open up with
then what is it with the ending title card? Because that was happening the first one, too. Is that like a DreamWorks? Did I miss that in DreamWorks films? That they just end with title cards at the end?
I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It's just more of an observation because it's like for me, it was almost like if you forgot what movie you were just watching, here you go. I was like, do we have to have? I get why you have it. It's just like but like I'm super excited for what 3 could be.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of movie that's going to be. Because, like I said, the first one was pretty complete. This was also pretty complete, too. Mm-hmm. Except for the idea that there is forces out there that could potentially be bothersome. But if that's the case, then I don't know if I want a rehash of the second one. I don't know what I want for 3. So that's not to say that I don't know what I want, but it just I don't think I want to have 2 again. That makes sense.
Roberto, I have 3 words for you.
Sure.
Dragons in space.
Done.
Right?
Done.
Right?
Done. Money.
Yep.
Where do I give it? Who do I give my money to? Who do
That's all I'm saying.
Who do I give money to? Fucking Vikings in space? Lost Vikings again? Oh yeah, I'm in. I'm in.
Could you imagine just like little leather space helmets on everyone?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Shut up and take my money. You're talking. You gotta go. Look, if they don't fucking hear this, look. If DreamWorks doesn't hear this shit, guys, if for some reason they don't hear this, we got a fucking gold mine on our hands. Okay. I want
All
you
right.
to
So
keep-
we're starting a Kickstarter in the
Right.
next week.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Right. Exactly. We're gonna ask for about $1 million because we need at least $1 million. I don't know. Do we need more? How much money goes? How much does the film cost? What kind of money does film?
Movies?
Movies.
Oh, I don't know.
What can we do this on like $5 and a pack of Coke?
Sure. I mean,
We'll just make a.
it'll be a very different movie.
We'll do a what's that fucking we'll do a suite of a fucking Lost in Space or some shit.
But could you imagine like
That would be awesome.
like 20 of those gas breathing dragons all like pointing down as someone ignites it and it's just like
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be interesting. It would
Right?
definitely test the physics of dragons and the
Sure.
idea of how does it combust? Does it provide its own air and things like that? It'd be interesting to note.
Yeah.
Brandt, thank you so much for doing the show with me.
You bet.
Tell people they can find you online, sir.
Yo, you can find me on Twitter at Gadowag, GATOWAG, or look for me anywhere else with Brandt Hughes or Gadowag, whatever.
There you go. Of
I'm
course,
out there.
yeah, of course. You can find me. I'm at Vincent404 on the Twitters. If you want to talk about this podcast, maybe give your opinions on How to Train Your Dragon 2 or the first one or what you even think the third one is going to be, hit our website up, CosmicRadio.TV/Cinematalkraphy. There you'll find links to the show notes, our social account at Cinematography there on Twitter, previous episodes, and of course everything else on the show and my other shows and other shows on networks such as Retro Fun Time, because that's the one I want to talk about for no apparent reason. And of course, till next time, ta-ta.
Yeah. Goodbye.